Okay, so we're going to talk about epoxy grout. We're in my house, in my steam shower. This is a place that I had to use epoxy grout. So the advantage to epoxy grout is that it's chemical resistant, completely seals off the joint. So it's ultra recommended that when you're doing a steam shower, you use the epoxy grout. So as you've seen me in the past video, I've used a grout bag to install the epoxy grout. So I mixed the two compounds together, I've put it into a grout bag, and I pump the joints overflowing with grout right back to the surface behind, and then use the grout float to smooth them and push them down into the joint. Now that method I use is because this tile is so large and I don't need to smear grout all over in this inside section, so it just speeds up the cleanup of and the application of that grout. Now when I tile the floor, or sorry, when I grout the floor in here, it is a 4" by 4" tile. Now grout bagging that would make no sense, so I am in fact going to have to use my float and smear it all over the floor and then clean it all up. So couple of differences with epoxy grout over the other types of grout are that you're going to want to use a float with a more rigid piece on it, so not a rubber float, but it's got a harder plastic on it so that you're able to really clean off the epoxy the best you can. Another difference is when I'm doing the cleanup, I use a grout sponge that has a scrub pad on the one side. Now with the epoxy grout, once it's in the joint, it's kind of more like an adhesive compared to like another grout, so it stays in there. Water doesn't really make it get thin and start leaking, so it's much different than another type of grout where they say try not to get too much water in there, leave it for a certain amount of time before you start washing it, etc., etc. When you fill this joint in with grout, you can literally immediately warm water and scrub it flush to the surface. Now that will clean off all the extra that's on there and then sponge it clean. Another thing that's quite different with epoxy grout is with the cleanup, most manufacturers recommend that you use soap as well. So you're going to use soap and water to clean off the residue that's on the tile. Now once all your joints are completely filled, the epoxy grout, when it's dry, is a total sealed compound that's in those joints. So you don't really want to, you really want to make sure that you're filling all those joints right full to the back, and that you get your cleanup done, because if you miss some areas with the epoxy, it's literally bonded on there forever. So you'll want to do some test sections and make sure you know what you're doing before you carry on, because all the work that's involved with getting your project to this point, just to mess it up on the epoxy grout would be sad. So just get the epoxy grout. Before you smear it all over the wall, do a test sample. Make sure you understand what's going on. For larger tiles, I suggest a grout bag. That's definitely a way that you can see what's going on right away. Pump it into the joints, flatten it down, clean off a little section. Make sure you're confident with that and carry on. So same thing, if you're going to do it with the full spread way, not the epoxy grout, take a little bit out once you make it, test the section, wipe it clean, or scrub it clean, wipe it clean, make sure you know what's going on, and you should have great success with your project. It's if you're unsure, you spread the whole thing out, you wasted your time, all your time before you should have been starting to clean, and go from there, you might run into trouble. Another thing with these epoxy grouts is they do sell them in different quantity sizes, so you can just take little sections of this job on at a time. For instance, there is black grout in my floor tiles and in my ceiling tiles. There's gray grout in my wall tiles. To finish these wall tiles, it took me 3 containers. So when I did the walls in here, I had 3 separate times of applying, cleaning, then go mixing, applying, cleaning, go mix, apply and clean, and then 2 times for the black. So that's just a nice way of doing it, just in smaller bunches rather than getting a big pail and being under all that pressure. So hope you enjoyed the epoxy grout section, and good luck with your project.